glass vial sits on a shelf in the Pennsylvania Military Medical Museum, no bigger than a man's thumb. Inside, 4 fragments of rusted metal rest against each other like sleeping things. The label beneath them is typed in faded ink, Lucas Brenner, German POW, France, 1945, extracted by Captain William Mercer. Most visitors walk past without stopping. The museum is full of instruments and photographs and uniforms behind glass, and a small vial of shrapnel does not command attention the way a field surgeon's kit does, or the way a Medal of Honor display does. But the fragments are still there, and they have been there for 50 years waiting for someone to ask the question that matters. These fragments were American. The man who carried them was not. And the story of how they left his body is the story of how a war ends, not with treaties or surrender documents, but with a scalpel and a pair of hands that refused to let hatred be the final word. Eastern France. April 9th, 1945. The sound comes first, not the whistle of incoming shells, but the low rumble that moves through the ground like the earth is tearing itself apart from below. Lucas Brenner is lying flat in a foxhole with his face pressed into the dirt and his hands covering his ears, but it does not help. The rumble becomes a roar. The roar becomes a series of impacts so close together they feel like a single endless detonation. American artillery, 105mm howitzers, firing from positions 3 miles west. The shells are landing in a pattern, walking across the German defensive line in neat intervals, and Lucas knows this because he has seen it before. He has survived it before. But surviving it once does not make the second time easier. The first shell hits 60 meters to his left. The explosion lifts a column of dirt and smoke into the air, and the shockwave rolls over the foxhole like a wave breaking against a seawall. Lucas feels it in his chest, in his teeth, in the base of his skull. The second shell hits 40 meters out. The third hits 20. The pattern is tightening. Lucas is 22 years old. He has been in France for 8 months, assigned to a machine gun squad that was supposed to hold a defensive line that no longer exists. His unit started with 43 men. There are 11 left. They are dug in along the edge of a farmer's field, outside a village whose name Lucas has never learned, and they are waiting for the artillery to stop so the American infantry can come. The MG-42 is beside him in the foxhole, wrapped in a canvas tarp to keep the dirt out of the mechanism. Lucas built this position 2 days ago. He dug down 4 feet, lined the walls with wooden planks, scavenged from a bombed-out barn, and created a firing step that gives him a clear line of sight across the field. He did this because it is his job. He did this because the machine gun is the only thing between his squad and total collapse, and if the gun goes down, they all go down. The 4th shell hits 10 meters away. Lucas does not see the explosion. He sees the flash of light through his closed eyelids, and then he is weightless for half a second, lifted off the ground by the force of the blast, and when he comes down, his ears are ringing so loud he cannot hear his own breathing. He opens his eyes. Smoke everywhere, the smell of cordite and burning wood. His hands are still covering his ears, and when he pulls them away, his palms are wet. He looks down. No blood, just sweat. He checks himself, arms, chest, legs. Everything intact. The machine gun is still beside him. Still wrapped, still. The pain comes late. It always does. There is a half-second delay between the moment of injury and the moment the body realizes it has been opened. And in that half-second, Lucas feels nothing. Then the delay ends. His left thigh is on fire. Lucas looks down and sees the tear in his uniform trousers just above the knee. The fabric is dark with blood, soaking through, fast spreading in a circle that grows as he watches. He reaches down with his right hand and presses his palm against the wound, and the pain spikes so hard his vision goes white at the edges. He has been hit. Shrapnel. A fragment from the shell casing thrown out by the explosion, traveling fast enough to punch through cloth and skin and muscle and lodge itself somewhere deep inside his leg. He can feel it in there, a foreign object grinding against bone every time he moves. Lucas takes his hand away and looks at his palm. Blood. A lot of it. Too much. The wound is not spurting, which means the fragment missed the femoral artery, but it is bleeding steady and thick, and if he does not stop it soon, he will pass out from blood loss before the next shell even lands. He needs a bandage, he needs a medic. He needs to get out of this hole and find cover somewhere else because the American guns are still firing and the next shell could land directly on top of him, but his leg will not move the way it is supposed to. When he tries to shift his weight, the pain flares again sharper this time, and his thigh feels like someone has driven a railroad spike through the middle of it. Lucas grits his teeth and reaches for his belt. He unbuckles it with shaking hands and pulls it free, then wraps it around his thigh just above the wound and pulls it tight. The pressure sends another wave of pain through his leg, but the bleeding slows. Not stopped, just slowed. It will have to be enough. He looks around. The foxhole is still intact, but the edge has collapsed on one side, dirt spilling down into the bottom. The MG-42 is half buried. Lucas pulls the canvas tarp off and checks the gun. No visible damage. The barrel is clean. The feed mechanism looks solid. If he can get it set up, he can still fire. If the Americans come, he can still do his job. But first he needs to stop the bleeding. Lucas pulls off his jacket and tears at the lining until a strip of fabric comes free. He wraps it around the wound over the belt and ties it as tight as he can manage with one hand. The fabric soaks through immediately, but it holds. He tears off another strip and wraps that one too, then another. By the time he is finished, his left thigh is wrapped in 3 layers of torn cloth, all of them dark with blood, and his hands are shaking so badly he can barely tie the final knot. The artillery stops. The silence that follows is worse than the shelling. Lucas knows what it means. The guns have done their job. Now the infantry is coming. He hauls himself up onto the firing step and looks out across the field. Smoke is still hanging in the air, thick and grey, but through it he can see movement. Shapes, men moving in a line, spread out, advancing slowly. American soldiers, 30 of them, maybe 40. They are 200 meters away and closing. Lucas pulls the MG-42 up onto the lip of the foxhole and locks it into position. His hands know the motions by muscle memory. Load the belt, pull the charging handle, settle the stock against his shoulder. The gun is ready. He is not. His leg is screaming at him, and every time he shifts his weight, the pain gets worse, but he forces himself to stay still and keep his eyes on the field. The Americans are 150 meters out now, close enough to see details, helmets, rifles. The way they move in short bursts, dropping to the ground every few seconds, then getting up and moving again. They are good, disciplined. They are not rushing. They know the German line is broken and they are taking their time. Lucas puts his finger on the trigger and waits. 100 meters, he can hear his own breathing now, fast and shallow. His leg feels like it is full of broken glass and the belt around his thigh is cutting off circulation, but he does not loosen it. If he loosens it, the bleeding will start again. If the bleeding starts again, he will not be able to hold the gun steady. 75 meters, Lucas fires. The MG-42 roars. The sound is deafening, a sustained burst of noise that drowns out everything else. The gun shakes in his hands, the recoil driving into his shoulder, but he holds it steady and walks the fire across the field. The first American goes down, then the second. The rest drop to the ground and start firing back muzzle flashes, winking in the smoke bullets, snapping past Lucas's head and thudding into the dirt behind him. He fires again, another burst. The barrel is heating up, the metal glowing faintly even in the daylight, and the smell of burning oil fills the foxhole. Lucas does not stop. He cannot stop. If he stops firing, the Americans will advance. If they advance, they will overrun the position. If they overrun the position, the rest of his squad will die. His leg gives out, not all at once, just a slow collapse, the muscles refusing to support his weight anymore, and suddenly Lucas is on his knees in the bottom of the foxhole, with the machine gun pointing at the sky. He drags himself back up onto the firing step, but the pain is so intense now that his vision is starting to blur at the edges. He blinks hard and forces himself to focus. The Americans are retreating, falling back. They are dragging their wounded with them, pulling back across the field in the same disciplined line they used to advance. Lucas watches them go and feels nothing. No triumph, No relief, just the pain in his leg and the sound of his own heartbeat pounding in his ears. He looks down at the bandage. It is soaked through all 3 layers and blood is dripping onto the floor of the foxhole. The belt is still tight, but it is not enough. The fragment is still in there, still grinding against bone, and every heartbeat sends another pulse of blood out through the torn tissue. Lucas knows what this means. He has seen it before. Shrapnel wounds that do not get treated turn into infections. Infections turn into gangrene. Gangrene turns into amputation or death, whichever comes first. He needs a medic. He needs a field hospital. He needs to get out of this foxhole and find help before the wound gets worse. But the Americans are regrouping. He can see them in the distance, gathered behind a low ridge, and he knows they will come again. Maybe in an hour, maybe in 10 minutes. And when they come, someone needs to be here with the machine gun. Lucas leans back against the wall of the foxhole and closes his eyes. The pain is constant now, a deep throbbing ache that radiates from his thigh all the way down to his ankle. He reaches into his coat pocket and pulls out a metal canteen. There is still a little water left. He unscrews the cap and pours half of it over the bandage, trying to rinse away some of the blood, but it does not help. The fabric is too soaked. The wound is too deep. He drinks the rest of the water and tries to think. The fragment is American. He saw the shell casing before it exploded, saw the marking stamped into the metal, US 105 millimeters. An American howitzer shell fired by an American gun crew fragmented by an American fuse, and now a piece of that shell is buried in his leg, and it will stay there until someone cuts it out or until it kills him. There is something darkly funny about that, Lucas thinks, something almost poetic, but the pain is too intense for him to appreciate the irony, and after a few seconds, he stops thinking about it and focuses on staying conscious. The sun is starting to set. Lucas has been in the foxhole for 6 hours and the American infantry has not come back. Either they are waiting for reinforcements or they have decided the position is not worth taking. It does not matter. Lucas cannot hold it anymore. His leg is useless now, the muscles too damaged to support weight, and the bleeding has slowed but not stopped. If he stays here, he will die. If he leaves, the position will be abandoned. Both options are bad. He chooses the one that keeps him breathing. Lucas wraps the machine gun in the canvas tarp and buries it in the dirt at the bottom of the foxhole. Then he hauls himself up over the edge and starts crawling. The field is pocked with shell craters and torn up earth. Lucas drags himself from crater to crater, using his arms to pull his body forward and his good leg to push. The injured leg just drags behind him dead weight, the bandage leaving a dark smear in the dirt. Every meter feels like a mile. Every breath feels like it might be the last one. He reaches the tree line after 20 minutes. The rest of his squad is gone. Either they retreated during the shelling, or they are dead. Lucas does not have the energy to find out which. He pulls himself into the shadow of a collapsed stone wall and lies there staring up at the sky, listening to the sound of distant gunfire rolling across the landscape like thunder. His leg is not bleeding anymore. That should be a good sign, but it is not. The wound has started to close on its own, trapping the fragment inside, and Lucas knows what that means. The infection will start soon, maybe tomorrow, maybe the day after. And once it starts, it will not stop until someone cuts the fragment out, or until the infection spreads far enough to kill him. He needs to find his unit. He needs to find a medic. He needs to do something other than lie here in the dirt, waiting to die, but his body will not move. The adrenaline that kept him going for the past 6 hours is gone, and all that is left is pain and exhaustion and the slow, creeping realization that he might not make it through the night. Lucas closes his eyes. He thinks about home, about his mother standing in the kitchen of their apartment in Hamburg, kneading dough for bread, about the way the morning light used to come through the window and turn everything gold, about the smell of yeast and flour and the sound of her humming while she worked. He wonders if she is still alive. The last letter he received from her was 6 months ago, and it was short. She wrote about rationing and air raids and the way the city was changing. She did not write about being hungry, but Lucas could read it between the lines. Everyone in Germany was hungry. The British were bombing the cities. The Russians were advancing from the east. The war was lost and everyone knew it, but the fighting continued anyway because no one knew how to stop. Lucas opens his eyes and looks down at his leg. The bandage is dark and crusted now, stiff, with dried blood. He reaches down and touches it gently, and even that small pressure sends a spike of pain through his thigh. The fragment is still in there. He can feel it. He wonders what it looks like. If it is a single piece or multiple fragments, if it is jagged or smooth, if it went in clean or if it tumbled and tore through the muscle on its way to the bone. He wonders if the American gun crew that fired the shell knows what happened to it. If they care, if they even think about the men on the other end of the trajectory, or if the distance makes it easy to forget. Lucas does not hate them. He is too tired to hate anyone. He just wants the pain to stop. He just wants to go home. He just wants to see his mother one more time and tell her that he tried to stay alive, that he did everything he could, that the shrapnel was American, but the hands that will save him might be too. But he does not know that yet. Right now, all he knows is pain. 3 days pass. Lucas does not remember most of it. He remembers crawling through the woods following the sound of German voices. He remembers finding the remnants of his unit scattered and retreating. He remembers an officer looking at his leg and shaking his head, and he remembers the word the officer used, hopeless. He remembers ignoring the officer and walking anyway, one step at a time, the leg dragging behind him. The pain so constant now that it has become background noise, a thing he carries with him like the weight of his uniform. He remembers the moment the fever started. The heat spreading through his body, starting at the wound and radiating outward until his whole body felt like it was burning. He remembers the smell, sweet and rotten like fruit left out in the sun too long. He remembers knowing what that smell meant. Infection. On the 15th day of April 1945, Lucas Brenner stands in a farmhouse courtyard with his hands above his head and watches American soldiers search the 6 German soldiers who surrendered with him. The Americans are thorough. They check pockets and belts and collars, looking for weapons or documents or anything that might be useful. They do not look at Lucas's leg. They do not ask if anyone is injured. They just line the prisoners up against a stone wall and tell them to wait. Lucas stands on his good leg and keeps his weight off the bad one. The bandage is hidden beneath his trousers, and as long as he does not limp, the Americans will not notice. He has heard stories about what happens to wounded prisoners, about how they are separated from the others and taken away and never seen again. The stories are propaganda probably, but Lucas believes them anyway. So he stands still and keeps his face blank and does not let the pain show. The Americans load the prisoners into the back of a truck. Lucas climbs in with the others and sits on a wooden bench, his back against the side panel, his injured leg stretched out in front of him. The truck starts moving. Every bump in the road sends a jolt of pain through his thigh, but Lucas does not make a sound. The other prisoners are silent too. No one speaks. No one looks at each other. They just sit and stare at the floor and wait to see where they are being taken. The truck drives for 2 hours and stops at a fenced field. There are rows of tents inside the fence, and a processing station at the gate, and a makeshift clinic with a single medic who is already overwhelmed. Lucas walks through the intake line without incident. The American soldier, checking names and numbers, barely looks at him. No one asks if he is injured. The medic is busy with gunshot wounds and amputations, and Lucas slips through without being noticed. He is assigned to a tent with 40 other men. He is given a canteen of water and a piece of bread. He sits on the ground and pulls his jacket tight around his shoulders and feels the fever building in his chest like a fire someone forgot to put out. 7 more days pass. Lucas is loaded onto another truck and moved again. This time the destination is a prisoner of war camp in eastern France, a former German barracks that the Allies converted into a processing centre. The ride takes 8 hours. The road is torn apart by tank treads and shell craters, and the truck bounces violently over every rut and hole. Each jolt sends a spike of pain through Lucas's thigh. He bites down on his sleeve to keep from crying out. By the time the truck arrives, the bandage is soaked through with fluid that is no longer just blood. It is yellowish, thick. It smells like something died. But Lucas says nothing. He walks off the truck with the other prisoners and lines up for processing and does not let anyone see how much it hurts to put weight on his leg. He is assigned to Barracks 12. He takes a bunk in the corner as far from the door as possible and lies down with his face to the wall. The infection is spreading. He can feel it moving through the tissue, turning healthy muscle into something rotten. The wound site is hot to the touch. The skin around it has turned from red to purple to a mottled grey that looks like meat starting to spoil. Lucas knows what comes next. He has seen it before. Sepsis, organ failure, death. He wonders how long he has. A week maybe, 2 if he is lucky. The fragment is still in there, pushing bacteria deeper with every step he takes, and there is nothing he can do about it. He tried to treat it himself in the first few days, pouring alcohol over the wound and packing it with torn cloth, but that only made the bleeding worse. He tried to dig the fragment out with a knife, but the pain was too intense and he passed out before he could reach it. Now it is too late. The infection has gone too deep. Even if he told the Americans, even if they believed him, even if they had a surgeon available, the chances of survival are low. The fragment is lodged near the femur. Removing it without anesthesia would be agony. Removing it with anesthesia would require supplies the camp probably does not have. Lucas closes his eyes and tries to sleep. The fever makes it difficult. He drifts in and out of consciousness, half dreaming, half waking. He dreams about his mother, about the kitchen in Hamburg, about the smell of bread baking and the sound of her voice singing a song he has not heard since he was a child. When he wakes, it is morning. The other prisoners are getting up, getting dressed, lining up for roll call. Lucas tries to stand. His left leg will not support any weight. He tries again. The leg buckles and he collapses back onto the bunk. One of the other prisoners looks at him. Lucas shakes his head. The prisoner moves on. The barracks empties. Lucas is alone. He lies on the bunk and stares at the ceiling and listens to the sound of boots on gravel outside. He knows what is coming. Someone will notice that he did not report for roll call. Someone will come to check on him. And when they do, they will see the leg and they will know, and then it will be over one way or another. The door opens. Footsteps. A voice speaking English, slow and clear. Lucas does not move. The footsteps come closer. A hand touches his shoulder. Lucas opens his eyes. An American officer is standing beside the bunk. Older, 40 maybe, grey hair at the temples. He is wearing a white armband with a red cross on it. A doctor. The doctor speaks again. Lucas does not understand the words, but he understands the gesture. The doctor is pointing at his leg. Lucas does not move. The doctor reaches down and touches the fabric of Lucas's trousers just above the knee. Even that small pressure sends a spike of pain through the leg. Lucas goes rigid. The doctor pulls his hand back and looks at his fingertips. They are damp. He smells them. His expression does not change, but something in his eyes does. The doctor stands up and walks to the door. He calls out and 2 soldiers come in. They lift Lucas under the arms and carry him out of the barracks. Lucas does not fight. There is no point. His body has already made the decision for him. They carry him across the compound to a tent with a red cross painted on the side. Inside there is an examination table and a small cart with instruments on it and a lamp hanging from the ceiling. The soldiers lay Lucas on the table and step back. The doctor comes in behind them. He picks up a pair of scissors and cuts away the left leg of Lucas's trousers. The bandage comes into view, dark, stiff, crusted with dried blood and pus. The doctor begins unwrapping it. The cloth sticks to the skin like it has been glued there. When the final layer peels away, the wound is fully exposed. The skin around the entry site has turned black at the edges. The crater itself is filled with a mixture of pus and dead tissue and fragments of embedded shrapnel that glint under the overhead light. The smell fills the tent. Sweet. Rotten. Unmistakable. The doctor looks at Lucas. He speaks 3 words in English. Lucas does not know what they mean, but he sees the way the doctor's face has changed. Not anger, not disgust, something closer to sorrow. The doctor says it again, slower this time, and this time Lucas understands. Your wound is infected. Captain William Mercer has been a surgeon for 19 years. He learned his trade in hospitals in Philadelphia and Pittsburgh, places with clean floors and sterilized instruments and anesthesia that worked. He spent 18 months in field hospitals in North Africa and Italy, patching up American soldiers in tents that smelled like blood and gasoline. He did not ask to be assigned to prisoner medical duty. Most doctors did not. But he took the work seriously because the Hippocratic Oath did not come with exceptions for enemy combatants. Now he is standing in a medical tent in eastern France, looking at a wound that should have killed the young German on the table 3 weeks ago, and he is trying to calculate how much pain a human body can endure before it shuts down completely. The answer he knows is more than most people think. But there is a limit, and this boy is close to it. Mercer turns to the corporal standing beside the instrument cart. Raymond Haskell, 26 years old, good hands, steady under pressure. But there is something in Haskell's eyes right now that Mercer does not like, something hard. Mercer speaks quietly. We are going to do a debridement, full extraction and irrigation. I will need you to assist. Haskell nods. His face does not change. Mercer continues. We have no anesthesia. The morphine we have left is reserved for amputations. So, this is going to be rough. If he fights us, we will have to hold him down. Haskell looks at the German on the table. The boy's eyes are open, staring at the canvas ceiling. His chest is rising and falling too fast. His hands are gripping the edges of the table so hard the knuckles have turned white. Haskell says, "He is the enemy, sir." Mercer looks at him. I am aware of that, Corporal. They stand there for 3 seconds. Then Haskell turns and starts preparing the instruments: forceps, scalpel, irrigation bottle, basin, sulfur powder, gauze. He lays them out in order on a sterile cloth, his movements precise and mechanical. Mercer walks to the head of the table and looks down at the German. The boy is young, early 20s, dark hair, thin face, eyes that have the glazed look of someone who has been in pain for so long that pain is all they know. Mercer speaks in slow, clear English. I am going to remove the shrapnel and clean the wound. It will hurt, but if I do not do this, you will die. The boy does not respond. Mercer is not sure how much English he understands. Maybe none. It does not matter. The tone is what matters. The fact that someone is speaking to him like a human being instead of a piece of enemy equipment. Mercer picks up a small vial of morphine and a syringe. He draws 10 milligrams into the barrel, half the normal dose, just enough to take the edge off without rendering the patient unconscious. He needs the boy awake. If the boy passes out from shock, his blood pressure will drop, and if his blood pressure drops too far, he will not wake up. Mercer injects the morphine into the boy's arm. The boy flinches but does not pull away. Mercer sets the syringe down and positions the overhead lamp directly above the wound. The light is harsh and white, and it turns the infected tissue into something that looks like a photograph from a medical textbook. Black edges, grey center, yellow fluid pooling in the crater. Mercer pulls on a pair of gloves. He picks up the forceps. He looks at Haskell. Ready, Corporal Haskell nods. Mercer leans over the wound and inserts the tip of the forceps into the opening. The boy's entire body goes rigid, a sharp intake of breath. Mercer probes, gently feeling for metal. The forceps scrape against something hard. He adjusts the angle and probes again. There. A fragment. Shallow. Just under the skin. Mercer grips the fragment with the forceps and pulls straight up. It comes out easily. A jagged piece of steel about the size of a thumbnail, coated in pus and blood. He drops it into the basin. It hits the metal with a soft clink. The boy exhales. His hands relax slightly. Mercer probes deeper. The second fragment is harder to find, and it is buried in the muscle tissue close to the femur. He has to push the forceps in almost 3 inches, feeling his way blindly before the tip makes contact. When it does, The boy screams. It is not a long scream. It is short and strangled, cut off almost immediately as the boy bites down on a rolled piece of cloth Haskell placed in his mouth before the procedure started. But the sound fills the tent, and for a moment Mercer can hear nothing else. He does not stop. He grips the fragment and pulls. The tissue resists. The fragment is wedged in tight, surrounded by swollen muscle that is closed around it like a fist. Mercer pulls harder. The fragment shifts. The boy convulses his back, arching off the table, and Haskell moves quickly to hold his shoulders down. Mercer pulls one more time and the fragment comes free, larger than the first, irregular, sharp edges. He drops it into the basin. 2 down. The boy is shaking now, his whole body trembling. Sweat is running down his face, soaking into the cloth in his mouth. His eyes are squeezed shut. Mercer can see tears at the corners, not falling, yet just pooled there. Mercer reaches for the scalpel. The next part is worse. The necrotic tissue has to come out. All of it. Dead muscle, dead fat, dead skin. If any of it stays in, the infection will continue. And the only way to remove it is to cut it away, piece by piece. He makes the first incision. The boy's eyes snap open. Mercer cuts again, removing a section of blackened tissue the size of a quarter. The smell gets worse. Haskell turns his head slightly, breathing through his mouth. Mercer works methodically. Cut, remove, drop into basin. Cut, remove, drop into basin. Each cut releases more fluid, more of that sickly, sweet smell that means tissue is rotting from the inside out. The boy is making sounds now, not screams, just low, continuous moans that come from somewhere deep in his chest. Haskell is watching. His hands are on the boy's shoulders, holding him steady, but his eyes are on the wound. Mercer glances up and sees something shift in the corporal's expression. The hardness is still there, but there is something else now too, something uncertain. Mercer cuts away the last piece of necrotic tissue and sets the scalpel down. The wound is clean now, raw, bleeding, but clean. He picks up the irrigation bottle and begins flushing the cavity with saline solution. The liquid flows in clear and comes out red and yellow, carrying away debris and bacteria and fragments of tissue too small to cut. This is the moment the boy breaks. The saline hits exposed nerve endings and the pain goes beyond what morphine can dull. The boy's whole body convulses. His hands release the table and fly up toward the wound, trying to protect it, and Haskell has to grab his wrists and pin them down. The cloth falls out of the boy's mouth, and the sound that comes out is not a scream. It is a sob. One sob, then another. Then his whole chest is heaving and tears are running down his face and he is crying openly. The kind of raw, helpless crying that comes when the body has used up everything it had and there is nothing left but surrender. Mercer stops irrigating. He sets the bottle down and looks at the boy's face. The eyes are open again, but they are not seeing the tent or the lamp or the doctor standing over him. They are seeing something else, somewhere else. Mercer places one hand on the boy's shoulder. The touch is firm, steady. He speaks quietly. I know it hurts. The boy does not understand the words, but he understands the tone, the hand, the fact that someone is acknowledging the pain instead of ignoring it. His breathing slows slightly. The sobs become quieter. Not gone, just smaller. Mercer looks at Haskell. The corporal is staring at the boy's face. His own expression has changed completely. The hardness is gone. What is left looks like confusion, like he is trying to reconcile the image of an enemy soldier with the image of a young man crying on a table because someone is trying to save his life. Mercer picks up the forceps again. 2 more fragments. He can see them now embedded in the muscle at the base of the wound, small, deep. He reaches in with the forceps and extracts the 3rd fragment. The boy whimpers, but does not scream. The 4th fragment comes out the same way. Both go into the basin with the others. 4 pieces of American steel that traveled 3 miles through the air and ended up in the leg of a German boy who is now crying in a tent in France while an American doctor tries to undo the damage. Mercer rinses the wound one more time. Then he reaches for the sulfur powder and packs the cavity, filling it completely. The powder will fight the infection. If it works, if the boy's body can still mount a response, if the sepsis has not already spread too far. He covers the wound with clean gauze and wraps the entire thigh in a tight bandage. The boy is still crying, but quietly now. Exhausted tears, the kind that come after the body has emptied itself of everything else. Mercer helps the boy sit up. The movement causes another spike of pain and the boy gasps, but he does not fall. Haskell brings a canteen of water and the boy drinks it in 4 long swallows. His hands are still shaking. Mercer speaks again, slower this time. "You will stay here for observation. We will change the bandage every day. If the fever breaks, you will survive." The boy nods. He does not say thank you. Mercer does not expect him to. But when Mercer turns to leave, the boy reaches out and grabs his wrist. The grip is weak, but it lasts just long enough to communicate something that words cannot. Mercer looks down at the boy's hand, then at his face. The boy's eyes are red. His cheeks are wet. But there is something in his expression now that was not there before. Not gratitude exactly. Something simpler. Recognition. The acknowledgement that one human being just saved another, and that the labels they wear do not change that fact. Mercer gently pulls his wrist free and nods. The boy lies back down on the table. Haskell covers him with a blanket and steps away. Outside the tent, Mercer strips off his gloves and washes his hands in a basin of cold water. Haskell comes out behind him and stands there, not speaking. Mercer dries his hands and looks at the corporal. "You did well in there." Haskell does not respond immediately. He is looking at the tent, at the canvas wall that separates them from the boy inside. Finally, he says, "He is just a kid, sir." Mercer nods. "So was your brother." Haskell looks at him sharply. Mercer holds his gaze. "I read your file, Corporal. Private Thomas Haskell, killed in action. December 1944, Ardennes. Machine gun fire." Haskell's jaw tightens. "Yes, sir." Mercer says, "And the boy in there was a machine gunner?" Haskell does not answer. Mercer continues, "I am not going to tell you what to feel, but I will tell you this. Your brother died in a war. That boy in there is dying from a wound. Those are not the same thing. And if we start confusing them, we lose the part of ourselves that makes us different from the people who started this war in the first place." Haskell looks down at his hands. He is quiet for a long time. Then he says, "What do you need me to do, sir?" Mercer says, "Go back in there in 30 minutes and check his vitals, temperature, pulse, blood pressure. If the fever spikes above 104, come get me. If it drops below 99, come get me. Otherwise, let him rest." Haskell nods and walks away. Mercer watches him go, then turns and looks at the tent one more time. The boy is in there alone in pain in a foreign country, surrounded by people who speak a language he does not understand. And in 36 hours, if the infection does not kill him, he will wake up to a meal that will change everything. 36 hours later, Lucas Brenner opens his eyes and does not know where he is. The tent, the smell of canvas and disinfectant, the sound of voices speaking English somewhere outside. He remembers the surgery, the pain, the crying, the hand on his shoulder. He tries to sit up. His leg protests, but the pain is different now, duller, manageable. The fever is gone. He can feel the difference immediately. His head is clear. His skin is cool. The infection has not won. A shadow falls across the cot. Lucas looks up. An American soldier is standing there, not the doctor, someone younger. The one who held his shoulders during the surgery. The soldier is holding a metal tray. He sets the tray down on a small table beside the cot and steps back. Lucas looks at the tray. His brain does not process what he is seeing at first. It has been too long since he has seen anything like this. 3 eggs, scrambled, yellow and fluffy. 5 strips of bacon, crispy, dark at the edges. 2 pieces of toast, buttered. A tin cup of coffee, black, steam rising. Lucas stares. The American soldier says something in English. Lucas does not understand the words, but the gesture is clear. Eat. Lucas reaches for the first strip of bacon. His hand is shaking. He brings it to his mouth and bites. The taste hits him before he even finishes chewing. Salt. The first thing, sharp and clean. Then the smoke, hickory maybe, applewood, something that smells like burning and tastes like comfort. Then the fat, rich and thick, coating his tongue, sliding down his throat like warm silk. And underneath it all, a subtle sweetness. Caramelized sugar, or maybe just the natural sugars in the pork brought out by the heat. Lucas closes his eyes. He chews slowly. The bacon is crispy on the outside, but when he bites through the crust, the inside is still soft, still tender. And the contrast between the two textures makes his brain light up in a way it has not in months. He swallows, opens his eyes, looks at the tray. 4 more strips. He picks up the second one. This time he does not close his eyes. He just eats. The bacon crunches between his teeth. The fat melts. The salt and smoke and sweetness layer on top of each other until he cannot tell where one flavor ends and another begins. The third strip. The fourth. He is not thinking anymore. He is just eating. His body is taking over, demanding calories, demanding fat, demanding salt, demanding everything it has been denied for weeks. He picks up the 5th strip, brings it halfway to his mouth, stops. His mother is eating tree bark. The thought comes out of nowhere and it hits him like a physical blow. His mother. In Hamburg. Boiling strips of bark in water to make them soft enough to chew. Eating them because there is nothing else. Starving. While he sits here in a tent in France, eating bacon that tastes like something from a dream. Lucas's eyes start to burn. He blinks hard. The bacon is still in his hand. He looks at it. 5 strips. He has eaten 4. His mother has not eaten meat in 6 months. Maybe longer. She is eating bark. And he is eating bacon. The tears come before he can stop them. Not sobs this time. Just silent tears running down his face while he sits there holding a piece of bacon and trying to reconcile the fact that he is alive and fed and safe, while the woman who raised him is starving in a city that is being bombed into rubble. The American soldier is watching. Lucas can feel his eyes. But the soldier does not say anything. He does not move. He just stands there. Lucas wipes his face with the back of his hand. He puts the 5th strip of bacon down on the tray. He cannot eat it. Not now. Maybe later. But not now. He picks up the fork and takes a bite of the scrambled eggs. They are still warm. The yolk is runny in places, and when he cuts into it with the fork, the yellow liquid runs out and mixes with the bacon grease still on the plate. He takes another bite. The eggs are soft, creamy, salted just enough. He eats half of them and stops. He drinks the coffee. It is strong, bitter, but there is sugar in it dissolved at the bottom, and when he gets to the last sip, it is almost sweet. He sets the cup down and looks at the American soldier. The soldier is still watching. Lucas does not know what to say. He does not have the words in English. He does not even have the words in German. So he just looks at the soldier and nods once. The soldier nods back. Then he does something Lucas does not expect. He reaches for the tray, picks up the 5th strip of bacon and sets it down on the table beside the cot. Not on the tray, beside it, like he is saying this one is for later. Then the soldier turns and walks out of the tent. Lucas sits there for a long time looking at the strip of bacon on the table. It is cold now. The fat has congealed slightly, turning opaque and white at the edges, but it is still there, still real. Still a piece of abundance in a world that has forgotten what abundance means. He reaches out and picks it up. He wraps it carefully in a piece of cloth torn from his bandage. He puts it in the pocket of his jacket. He does not know why. Maybe because it feels like something worth saving. Maybe because he wants to believe that someday he will be able to give it to his mother, even though he knows that is impossible. Maybe because holding on to it is the only way he can hold on to the idea that kindness still exists. 3 days later, the fever is gone completely. Lucas can stand without help. He can walk short distances with a limp that will probably never fully go away. Captain Mercer discharges him from the medical tent and assigns him to light duty in the camp kitchen. Lucas peels potatoes, he washes dishes, he does not speak to the other prisoners, he keeps the strip of bacon in his pocket wrapped in cloth, and every morning, when he wakes up, he checks to make sure it is still there. Corporal Haskell comes by the kitchen once a day. He does not say anything, he just nods. Lucas nods back. They do not need words. They both know what happened in that tent. They both know that something changed. On the 8th of May 1945, a voice comes over the loudspeaker in the camp. It is speaking English, and most of the prisoners do not understand the words, but they understand the tone. And within minutes the news spreads. Germany has surrendered. The war is over. The announcement comes at midday. A crackling voice over the camp loudspeakers speaking in English. Most of the German prisoners do not understand the words, but they understand the silence that follows. The way the American guards stop what they are doing and look at each other. The way some of them start to smile. Within 10 minutes, the news spreads through the barracks in whispered German. Germany has surrendered. Unconditional. The war is over. Some of the prisoners cry. Some stare at the walls. Some sit down on their bunks and do not move for hours. A few refuse to believe it, insisting it is propaganda, a trick to break morale, but most of them just feel nothing. The war has been over for them since the moment they were captured. This is just the paperwork catching up. Lucas is in the kitchen when he hears. He is standing at a wooden sink, scrubbing pots with cold water and lye soap, when one of the other prisoners comes in and says, "It is finished. We lost." Lucas sets down the pot. He dries his hands on a rag. He walks outside and looks at the sky. It is clear. Blue. The same sky that was there yesterday and will be there tomorrow. Nothing has changed except a signature on a document somewhere, but that signature means millions of men can stop killing each other, and Lucas supposes that is worth something. He reaches into his pocket and touches the cloth-wrapped bacon. Still there. He has been carrying it for 3 days. It is starting to smell faintly rancid, but he cannot bring himself to throw it away. Corporal Haskell finds him an hour later. Lucas is sitting on the ground behind the kitchen, his back against the wall, his injured leg stretched out in front of him. Haskell walks over and stands there for a moment, not speaking. Then he says, "You hear the news?" Lucas looks up. He does not understand all the words, but he understands enough. He nods. Haskell says, "What will you do?" Lucas thinks about it. He knows a little English now, enough to understand simple questions, enough to give simple answers. He says slowly, "Go home." "If there is home?" Haskell nods. He reaches into his pocket and pulls out a small bar wrapped in brown paper. He holds it out. Lucas takes it. The paper crinkles. He unwraps it slowly. Inside is a Hershey's chocolate bar, 5 ounces. The paper inside the wrapper says tropical bar, but it is just chocolate, dark brown, divided into segments. Lucas looks at Haskell. The corporal says, "For your mother, when you see her." Lucas stares at the chocolate. He does not know what to say. The words are not there in English or German, so he just nods and wraps the chocolate carefully in the brown paper and puts it in his other pocket opposite the bacon. Haskell turns and walks away. Lucas sits there for a long time, feeling the weight of the chocolate in his pocket. It is not heavy, maybe 4 ounces, but it feels like the weight of an apology, or a hope, or a promise that somewhere, somehow, the world is not entirely broken. That night, Lucas writes a letter. The Red Cross is handling mail for displaced persons, and the camp has set up a table where prisoners can write to family members if they know an address. Lucas writes to his mother's last known location in Hamburg, the apartment on Bramstrasse where she lived before the bombing started. The letter is short. He does not have much paper, and his handwriting is shaky. Mutter, ich lebe. Ich bin in Frankreich in einem Gefangenenlager. Die Amerikaner haben mich gerettet. Ich komme bald nach Hause. Ich bringe Schokolade mit. Dein Sohn Lucas. Mother, I am alive. I am in France in a prisoner camp. The Americans saved me. I will come home soon. I am bringing chocolate. Your son, Lucas. He folds the letter and puts it in an envelope. He writes the address on the front. He gives it to the Red Cross volunteer at the table. The volunteer stamps it and puts it in a box with hundreds of other letters. Lucas watches the box and wonders if the letter will ever reach her, if the apartment is still standing, if she is still alive to read it. He does not know that the answer is no, that his mother Ilse Brenner died on the 14th of February 1945 during an Allied firebombing raid that turned Hamburg into an inferno, that she was buried in a mass grave with 200 other civilians whose names were never recorded, that the apartment on Brahmstrasse is now a pile of bricks and ash and charred wood. Lucas will not find this out for 4 more months. Right now, he still has hope. The camp begins processing prisoners for repatriation in June. The system is overwhelmed. Thousands of German soldiers are waiting to go home, but home no longer exists in any recognizable form. Cities are in ruins. Families are scattered. The occupation zones are still being drawn by men in rooms far away who have never seen the streets they are dividing. Lucas waits. He works in the kitchen. He saves 1 strip of bacon from breakfast every morning, even though the bacon has long since gone bad and he has to throw the old pieces away. It is a ritual now, a way of remembering that someone cared enough to leave him extra food. In July, Captain Mercer discharges Lucas from medical observation. The wound has closed. The scar tissue is thick and uneven, and the muscle damage means Lucas will never run again, but he can walk. He can work. That is enough. Mercer writes a final note in Lucas's file. Prisoner is fit for light work, should not be subjected to heavy labor or forced marches, recommend kitchen duty or clerical assignments during repatriation processing. That note, a single paragraph in a file that will eventually be archived in a warehouse in Maryland, saves Lucas's life a second time. Prisoners marked as fully recovered are assigned to labor details clearing rubble in French cities. Many of them are worked to exhaustion. Some do not survive the summer. Lucas stays in the kitchen. He peels potatoes and washes dishes and carries the chocolate bar in his pocket like a talisman. On the 14th of September 1945, Lucas Brenner is released from American custody. He is given a set of discharge papers, a ration card, and 20 marks. He is put on a train heading east toward the British occupation zone in Germany. The train is overcrowded. Former prisoners pack into compartments designed for half the number of people. Lucas shares a space with 11 others. No one speaks. They just sit and stare out the windows at a landscape that looks like the surface of the moon. The journey takes 2 days. The railroads are still damaged and the trains move slowly, stopping frequently to let military convoys pass. Lucas watches the countryside roll by. Fields torn up by tank treads, villages reduced to rubble, bridges collapsed into rivers, and everywhere people, walking along the roads with everything they own in sacks and carts. Going nowhere, going anywhere, just moving because staying still means facing what has been lost. The train stops at a processing station near Cologne. Lucas steps onto the platform and feels his leg buckle. He catches himself on a railing and stands there breathing hard, waiting for the pain to pass. A British soldier asks if he needs help. Lucas shakes his head and keeps walking. The British officer at the gate tells him that the city centre is mostly destroyed, but some neighbourhoods on the outskirts are still intact. Lucas thanks him in broken English and starts walking toward the address he has memorized. Brahmstrasse, the apartment where his mother lived. It takes him 4 hours to cover 3 miles. His leg will not bend properly, and every few blocks he has to stop and rest. When he finally reaches the street, he sees that the entire block has been flattened. There is no building, there are no walls, just piles of brick and twisted metal, and a few pieces of furniture that somehow survived and are now sitting in the open air like museum exhibits. A chair, a table with 3 legs, a mirror with the glass blown out. Lucas stands there until the sun goes down. He does not move. He just looks at the rubble and tries to find some piece of the apartment he remembers. The window where his mother used to stand in the mornings, the door where she used to wait for him when he came home from school. Anything. But there is nothing. The building is gone. His mother is gone. The life he remembers is gone. He reaches into his pocket and takes out the chocolate bar. It is still wrapped in brown paper, still intact. He unwraps it slowly and looks at the dark brown squares. 5 ounces of sweetness that was supposed to be a gift. A way of saying, I survived. A way of showing that even in the worst of times there are people who remember kindness. Lucas kneels down in the rubble. He sets the chocolate bar on a piece of brick that might have been part of the apartment's foundation. He does not unwrap it completely. He just leaves it there, wrapped in paper, and whispers, Ich bin zu spät gekommen, Mutter. I came too late. He stands up and walks away. He does not look back. Lucas spends the next 3 months in a displaced persons camp on the outskirts of Cologne. The camp is a collection of temporary barracks and tents where people with nowhere else to go can sleep and eat while they wait for the bureaucracy to sort itself out. There are hundreds of them, thousands, all waiting. Lucas gets a bunk in Barrack 7. He adds his name to the Red Cross registry of survivors. He checks the registry every day looking for his mother's name, even though he knows she will not be on it. Hope is a hard thing to kill. In October, he finds work as a carpenter's assistant. The city is rebuilding, and there is demand for anyone who can hold a hammer. Lucas cannot do the heavy lifting because of his leg, but he can measure. He can cut. He can assemble. The work is steady, and it keeps him fed. He does not talk about the war. Most people do not. It is easier to focus on rebuilding than to dwell on what was lost. But at night, when he lies in his bunk and listens to the sound of other men breathing in the dark, he thinks about the medical tent in France, about the American doctor who saved his life, about the corporal who gave him chocolate for a mother who was already dead. In March of 1946, almost a year after the surgery, Lucas receives a letter. It comes through the Red Cross Displaced Persons Office, forwarded from the prisoner of war camp in France. The envelope is addressed to him in handwriting he does not recognize. He opens it carefully. Inside is a single sheet of paper. The letter is written in English. Lucas has learned a little more of the language by now, enough to read simple sentences. He reads slowly. Dear Lucas Brenner, I was the surgeon who treated you in the POW camp in France. I am writing to ask if you made it home safely and if your leg healed properly. I hope this letter finds you well. If you would like to write back, my address is below. I would be glad to hear from you, Captain William Mercer. Lucas reads the letter 4 times. He does not understand all the words, but he understands the intention. An American officer, a man who had every reason to see him as just another enemy casualty, has taken the time to check if he is still alive. Lucas sits down at a table in the barracks and writes a reply. His English is poor, so he keeps it simple. Dear Captain Mercer, thank you for saving my life. I am in Germany now. I work as carpenter. My leg hurts, but I can walk. That is enough. My mother died before I came home. I had chocolate for her, but I was too late. Thank you, Lucas Brenner. He sends the letter and does not expect a reply. But 3 months later, another envelope arrives. Inside is a photograph of Captain Mercer in uniform, standing outside a hospital tent. On the back, Mercer has written a single sentence in careful handwriting. You were stronger than you thought. Lucas keeps the photograph in the wooden box where he keeps his discharge papers and ration card. Over the next 20 years, he and Mercer exchange 6 more letters. They are never long, and they never dig into the trauma of the war. They are simply 2 men who shared a moment of desperate humanity and want to remember that it happened. In 1952, Lucas marries a woman named Greta. She is a war widow with a 6-year-old daughter. They meet at a community kitchen where displaced persons gather for subsidized meals. Greta lost her first husband at Stalingrad and has been living with her parents in a condemned building. She and Lucas bond over the shared experience of having survived something that should have killed them. They do not talk about the war much. Most people do not. But they understand each other in ways that do not require words. They have a small wedding at a registry office. Lucas limps down the aisle with a cane. Greta's daughter throws rice. They move into a 2-room apartment on the edge of the city and start building a life out of whatever pieces they can find. Lucas keeps Mercer's letters in the wooden box under the bed. In 1954, Mercer writes about the birth of his son. In 1960, Lucas writes about Greta's daughter graduating from gymnasium. In 1965, Mercer sends a photograph of a family reunion in Pennsylvania. Lucas sends back a photograph of himself and Greta standing in front of their apartment. The letters are simple. Updates, small pieces of ordinary life, but they matter. They are proof that the world is still capable of connection, that kindness is not a finite resource. In 1968, Lucas receives a letter from a woman named Eleanor Mercer. She is writing to inform him that her husband, Captain William Mercer, died of a heart attack on the 4th of June. He was 63 years old. The funeral was held in Philadelphia. He was buried with military honors. Eleanor writes that her husband spoke often about the German prisoner whose life he saved, that it mattered to him, that he never forgot. Lucas reads the letter sitting at the kitchen table. Greta is washing dishes at the sink. She hears a sound and turns around. Lucas is crying, quietly. The same kind of exhausted tears he cried on the operating table 23 years earlier. Greta does not ask what is wrong. She just dries her hands and sits down beside him and waits. After a while, Lucas says, "He died. The doctor who saved me." Greta takes his hand. They sit there until the sun goes down. Lucas Brenner lives for another 26 years. The infection that nearly killed him in 1945 never fully leaves his body. The scar tissue in his thigh develops chronic complications. He walks with a cane for the last 20 years of his life. But he lives. He raises Greta's daughter as his own. He works until he retires. He sees Germany reunified. And every year on the 9th of April, the anniversary of the day he was wounded, he writes a short entry in a journal he keeps. April 9th, 1970, 25 years. Thank you, Dr. Mercer. April 9, 1980, 35 years. Greta and I celebrated our anniversary yesterday. April 9th, 1985, 40 years. I saw my daughter married today. She wore her mother's dress. April 9th, 1990, 45 years. The Berlin Wall is gone. I never thought I would see it. April 9th, 1993, 48 years. Greta and I visited the wall remnants. We brought flowers. April 9th, 1994, 49 years of borrowed time. I hope I used them well. Lucas Brenner dies on the 11th of November, 1994. He is 71 years old. The cause of death is heart failure, complications from old injuries. Greta is beside him when he goes, so is his daughter. He dies quietly in his sleep, the way most people hope to die. At the funeral, Greta opens the wooden box and finds the letters from Captain Mercer. She reads them for the first time. At the bottom of the box, wrapped in cloth, is a photograph. Mercer in uniform. On the back, the sentence, "You were stronger than you thought." Greta keeps the photograph. She donates the letters to a military archive in Munich. She thinks someone should know what happened, that someone should remember. The Pennsylvania Military Medical Museum receives a package in 1995. Inside is a small glass vial containing 4 fragments of rusted metal. There is a note from Eleanor Mercer, now 86 years old. The note explains that her husband kept these fragments for 50 years, that they were removed from a German prisoner of war in France in April of 1945, that the prisoner survived, that he and her husband corresponded for 20 years, that the prisoner died last year, and she thought the museum might want the fragments for their collection. The museum accepts the donation. They place the vial on a shelf in a display case alongside surgical instruments and photographs from field hospitals across World War II. They create a small placard with the basic facts. Shrapnel fragments removed from German POW Lucas Brenner, France, April 1945, extracted by Captain William Mercer, U.S. Army Medical Corps. Patient survived. The vial sits there. Visitors walk past it every day. Most of them do not stop. The museum is full of more dramatic exhibits. Amputated limbs preserved in jars, blood-stained uniforms, medals of honor. But the fragments are still there. 4 pieces of American steel that should have killed a young man and did not. 4 pieces of evidence that in the middle of the worst war in human history, a doctor looked at an enemy soldier and saw a patient, that a corporal looked at the man who might have killed his brother and chose to give him chocolate instead of contempt. The fragments are still there, and if you stop and read the placard, if you take the time to ask the question that matters, you will learn that the man who carried them lived for 49 more years, that he married, that he raised a daughter, that he rebuilt a city, that he wrote letters to the man who saved him and kept them in a wooden box under his bed, that he spent half a century trying to deserve the kindness he was shown on a table in a tent in France when an American doctor placed a hand on his shoulder and said, "I know it hurts." The fragments are still there. The man who carried them is not forgotten.